back to another episode of the Underrated and Overlooked podcast. So today we'll be talking a little bit about football. Spring obviously is here, so spring practice kicking off actually yesterday, kicking off all this week for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll have spring games. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, the latest coaching changes, and then we'll get some college football as some big things be going on. We'll talk about Georgia, Bama, obviously, and then in Colorado, and then we'll get into the NFL draft, which was a wicked weekend. So a lot to talk about there. And can't wait to get the full reaction. But Craig, how you feeling today?
Feeling good. It is the last day of April. And so you said it this week, it's not necessarily state championships, but we've got it all going on. We got lacrosse, soccer, baseball, tennis, golf. I mean, it is certainly busy. I'm excited though this weekend, the track and field sectionals. I want to see these times. I want to see some of these kids. I mean, Langston Hughes last year, Maurice Gleaton. Is he going to defend his crown? It's going to be a fun weekend.
Before we jump into football, who are you most excited? I just talked about Gleaton, but who are you most excited to see in the sectionals this week?
So I did a blog yesterday. It's very interesting. A team like Shiloh, they're going to be in the same classification as Hughes. They are so dominant in the jumps and the relay events, but in the jumps in their region tournament last weekend, I think they had about 72 points. So if you get a first place finish, that is 10 points. There's only 3 different jumps. So they're averaging about 20 points in their region in 3 jump events. They have a chance in the sectionals if they can get 2 or 3 guys qualified in the triple jump, long jump, and high jump. I think they have enough to where they can win those specific events and challenge Hughes, but it's going to come down to that because Hughes is too good at the relays, the 400, 200.
So that big differentiator will be in the jumps.
Yep. And then same sort of deal with if you look at Westlake and Carrollton, they went head to head on the boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
The Westlake girls won, the Carrollton boys won. But if you look at it, the Carrollton boys it was 62 points in the distance and then only 13 in the sprints.
Right.
So Westlake dominated the sprints, but then failed to win the field events. So you'll see a lot of that this weekend. So it is about what specific events you're the best at.
All right. It sounds like it's going to be a fun weekend. If you guys aren't following, check out Craig's blog on AJC. Does a good job with that, giving the latest what to watch for. And as you said, so much going on at the moment. New sports are starting. Obviously, we talked about football starting, and then obviously the other ones are ending. Track, as you mentioned, soccer, lacrosse, baseball. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But let's go and start with spring practice, Craig. What's kind of your thoughts? I had a story up on it. Kind of just programs to kind of watch for, but what programs are you excited to see this spring and kind of get underway?
So I think the most ideal situation and the coaches that are probably the most relieved this time around are the ones that are in their second season at their new school. Guys that got there last spring but now have a full year under the belt. And I got to start with Eric Godfrey of North Gwinnett. He made a short move over from Parkview to North Gwinnett last year. It was a little late in it. He got there in the spring, led them to a great season. And I think he is very familiar with his pieces now. He's got his son, a rising sophomore. He's going to be a starter on defense. I just think he's in a very good situation. He wouldn't have left Parkview unless it was a top-tier job. And I think North Gwinnett's going to start this season ranked higher than they have been probably since they won the state title in 2017.
No doubt about it. Any other schools caught your eye?
Well, definitely Camden County. I want to see how they look in their scrimmage with Coach Rowland coming over there. There's going to be a lot of energy, a lot of hype. That region in general is going to look a lot different this year. Colquitt's losing a lot of its offense, replacing new guys. And then definitely Milton. I think guys like you that are very familiar with the program, you've seen the underclassmen, which, I mean, there were a lot of them last year, but they won the whole thing. But it's like this year, when people see Milton coming out, I think Coach Reeves does such a great job. You're going to see him kind of shine off the dust of some of these underclassmen, and you're going to see a group of newcomers take the field for Milton this year.
100% agree with you when it comes to that. Yeah, they're going to be a team to watch. And as we said, Craig, they're going to return so many of their starters from the state championship team. I mean, they're all coming back. Obviously, it's not easy to win and go back-to-back, but when you're returning guys like a Luke Nickel, a C.J. Wiley, a Ryan Gia coming back defensively, Tyler Redmond, When you think about Dylan Lewis, like you think about their underrated linebacker core nobody talks about, AJ Benton, Hayden Tamania, like we got all these guys coming back. You feel really good about your team. And then, like you said, be able to shine kind of a little bit of light on the players, coming up, and the 27s are going to have big impacts in new roles. So I think it's going to be a fun year to kind of watch them.
Yes. And those new guys, I mean, Milton they do such a good job. And Coach Reeves, he's still fairly new there as well.
Yes, he is.
I think they're going to be motivated to win it once again. I mean, they are not content last year. Last year was a big victory. Walton was obviously favored. They took it. Now I feel like this is an opportunity for them to go back-to-back for the first time ever.
No doubt about it. And then mine is a couple underrated schools. One would be Valdosta. I just want to see kind of how they're going to look this year. Very talented team. And I feel like we haven't talked about them a lot, but I think, coming spring practice, I want to see kind of what are the biggest takeaways for people down in South Georgia. Obviously, their star players, Jalen Copeland, Todd Robinson, but I want to see who else are going to kind of step up the running back position, who's going to be some of their playmakers besides those two. So that's where my eyes go for them. And then next for me is North Cobb Christian. I mean, coming off that region championship, winning the first one in school history, how they follow that up. Teddy's obviously the guy in 2027 now. Started one of the only guys that started as a true freshman. So I want to see kind of the next step forward he's able to take in his career, and leading that team with some new weapons coming in as well.
No, that's a very good one. I'm trying to remember, who did they fall to in the playoffs?
That's a good one.
Let me pull it up real quick.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they were very young last year. Obviously had a tremendous season. Oh, who was that? Let's see. One sec. Okay, they've lost to Columbia 18-13. Columbia was fantastic last year.
Yes, they were.
Beat Mount Perrin, lots of shutouts. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Yeah, last year you look at every one of their losses. The Wesleyan won 9-7, Columbia 18-13, very close. I mean, they easily could have gone undefeated within the state. Had their coach on, I think that's definitely a good one.
No doubt. Speaking of coaches, well, before we get to that, was there any other schools you wanted to highlight? We continue to roll.
I think it will be interesting with Mount Vernon this year. Coach Edwards going over there from Milton. We've seen him, what he can do with the receivers. He's one of the greatest college receivers of all time. And it's funny, I bring it up every time, but he got his head coaching debut in the Georgia Elite Classic against his brother. He got the win in that one. His brother's now at Washington County. But I think it'll be interesting. Mount Vernon has been a very exciting program. They had a phenomenal year. They were cruising, I think, undefeated until it might have been Athens Christian. Someone in their region ended up serving them a pretty lopsided loss, but then they bounced back. I think he's one of the most exciting hires this offseason, top 5, and then going from Milton to a place where they're going to have good athletes, but it is a little bit different than what he's used to just in terms of roster size, having to probably play guys both sides of the ball. And, yeah, I think it'll be exciting to see kind of what he brings to the table this spring.
No doubt. Great point about you, Craig. And then, obviously, you've had so many coaches on your show. I think Friday you might have had 3. I mean, you've been doing a lot of interviews with some with Corky Kell coaches, some with just other coaches that are coming in a new role. So what coach or a couple coaches have kind of just caught your eye so far when you've interviewed them that just kind of, stood out to you?
I think the one that I have a feeling is going to make a very long-lasting impact is Tyler Jones at Cambridge. And I say it all the time, but I mean, last year it would have been amazing if Walton would have won the state title, but the way that they adapted throughout the season and then his impact in just 2 short seasons as Walton's offensive coordinator was unbelievable. He made them next level. And so I think him as head coach at Cambridge, I think they're going to be making deep playoff runs. They'll be one of the most exciting teams, disciplined. they can be very dangerous. So I think Tyler Jones, he's one to watch this year immediately. And then obviously like Travis Rowland also. In terms of new coaches or
Yeah.
Give me a second on that one.
Okay.
I want to give one more good one.
Okay. So while Craig is thinking about that, obviously he's had some great coaches. One that's caught my eye. I had him on my show a few weeks ago, and that was Portal. I got to talk to him, obviously when we had our Georgia League Classic in Rome. And I thought he was a phenomenal coach. I mean, how he was game planning a little bit and getting his guys going, and obviously losing a couple of guys, some standout guys for them, all-state guys, Amir Jackson, who's at Florida now. But I think he's going to be able to get that team ready to go this upcoming season. He went really good last year, 8-4. Enjoyed my interview with him, but that's a coach that I've talked to so far that's caught my eye as well. I can't wait to see what he does, and I'm on the same kind of frequency that Craig is. I think Cambridge and them getting Tyler Jones, and I even put that in when I had talked about top programs to watch, and I want to see what he can do with that offense, right? Offense that always has had a great offensive line, right? They got another heavily rated dude and Gabe Smith, who's phenomenal, but I want to see kind of, a team that's usually predominantly run the football, right? Preston Clemmer came in there last year, 2-year starter. I want to see how he uses the new weapons, right? The Tyler Blaylocks, who had a good season last year, over 1,000 yards rushing, close to 10-plus touchdowns. You got Hudson Cochera in there. How does he use him? Craig Dandridge, how does he use him? So the weapons are there. I just want to see what he's able to do. And we saw what he did with Walton, and having them play at such a high level and being able to, score all those points, and what they did the year prior, upsetting Buford and things like that. Stuff like that catches your eye. So I want to see what he can do with that program. And I think a more favorable region they have this year than they did last year. So that's going to be an interesting program to watch, to see if they can kind of hit the ground running and see kind of how that offense looks throughout the season.
Yes, sir. All right, I'm going to go with 3. And these are teams that I think there's some good things happening in the future for teams like Tift County. Jeff Littleton coming from Bainbridge. I think he's going to make a big difference, but it might take a year or two. I like that hire a lot. In terms of ones that this season are, I think, going to have them in kind of that historic territory. Think Ola with Dustin Atkins. This guy comes in from out of state. Last year it was, Tom Kazi. He also came in from out of state. They had their best season ever, and they were very young. I just think they've proven that they can hang with any team. Last year, going toe-to-toe with Warner Robins, Ware County, all those teams. He's coming in, and as I said, he looks like a more jacked Travis Kelce with a full sleeve. So he's very intimidating. He's bringing that. I don't know. I feel like he makes Ola pretty cool just being on the sideline. And then the other one, it was, let's see. Let me make sure I get this one. Yes, Stephen Holmes from Manchester going to Pike County. I think Pike County, they've had to go up against the Aplin counties, Haralson County. They've been not in the basement of that region, but close to it. I think Coach Holmes, what he's done at Manchester the last few years, I think he has a chance to get them into the playoffs right away.
There you have it. Those are the coaches that have caught our eyes, obviously for Craig as well. Going to be intriguing to see what those programs do this year. Obviously, stay tuned. Craig's going to have his rankings come out, obviously, right prior to the season. So I know he's going to kind of be, shaking his head a little bit, scratching his head when he puts it all together. But those are the programs that have caught our eye. Before we move on to the next topic in the high school segment, do you have anything else to add? I think you did.
Nope, but we'll probably have a story coming up. Obviously, spring just started. That will just list out all the spring scrimmages. I know people will be interested in those. You've been tracking them and showing them on the show. So stay tuned for that. I think that'll definitely be something we do.
There you go. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a lot of fun. But the next topic, 2 Buford players officially announced where they're going to spend their next stages of their careers. It's Montrez Walker, the outstanding linebacker from Buford going to be going to Colorado, and then Hayden Bradley, the tight end from Buford, has officially made his commitment to Ole Miss. What's your thoughts?
I think it's great for Colorado. You know what you're getting with a Buford kid. They run that place like a college. I think the more they recruit from the best schools out of Georgia, obviously every college coach knows about Buford. So I mean it's a big gift for them, especially linebacker. Um, so yeah, I think that's a great sign.
Yeah, for me, obviously we're gonna talk about Colorado a little bit later on, but I think just as far as defensively, obviously that's a good one, as you said. Them being from, kind of a powerhouse, you know what you're gonna get from Montrez, right? Downhill, coming linebacker, hard hitter, right? Good in coverage, can play solid to sideline. That's the position where they kind of struggle, Craig, when we talk about Colorado is linebacker. So being able to get him out of prep and having him come in, and obviously it's a big weekend. He just had their spring game. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. But being able to land his commitment, I thought was huge for them. He's an outstanding linebacker for Buford, and he's going to be able to come in and contribute. And I think what he liked is that he might not have to sit very long. He might be able to come in and play as a true freshman potentially in a position that they need, very badly. So that's my thoughts. And then Hayden Bradley is an interesting one. I thought he was going to go probably to a northern school, but I knew his commitment was coming this weekend, as I seen per reports. But yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we've seen Ole Miss tight ends actually, being able to get drafted. Obviously, a program with Lane Kiffin always just kind of knocking on the door. Just kind of can't quite get over that hurdle, but I think he can add a little bit of versatility to their offense, right? Pass catching tight end, also can block. Good red zone target, big play guy as well. And I think you're going to see that on display this year when he has, I think he can easily have over 600 plus yards and over 7+ touchdowns this year. So I think Ole Miss knocked it out of the park landing him.
100%. 6'4", 220 pounds already. You mentioned his blocking. It's a huge part of his game. So regardless of how fancy you want to get offensively, you have a guy that can literally play H-back. He can get ahead on the defender, open up space, and then you can develop him into a great pass catcher. I mean, he is blessed with the size. Um, he hasn't played the biggest role offensively, but I mean, that's just part of the system. We'll see. But physically and what they're going to get out of him, I think it's huge. I want to see him in that H-back role. I think he'll excel.
I agree
He's
with
a
you.
tough kid.
Yes, he is. That's a good point, Craig. Yeah, he's a tough kid. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to the Buford guys making their commitment decisions this past weekend. I know it was crazy going on in Colorado, but shout out to Montrez and obviously Hayden Bradley. That's our thoughts, man. And I'm pretty sure we'll have a game or two of Buford this year. We always do.
Yeah. And I think you'll agree. What I like about both these decisions by these guys, I think they both have a chance to really play. I mean, they aren't going somewhere to stand in line and like we see some of these. Seriously, it's like you got an opportunity to compete for the linebacker role, and then you get an opportunity based on your size to just go out there and find a role and maybe even develop into a bigger one later on. But I think both these guys went to. I like both the destinations.
No doubt about it. That's our thoughts on that. Before we transition to college, Craig, is there any big high school topics you wanted to hit on before we conclude?
Nope. Just stay tuned this week for all the updates. We've got all these spring playoffs going on. It's going to be crazy. It is. Big time upsets. The soccer's been off the charts. We'll be talking about that. So stay tuned into the shows. This is when we really get to analyze the matchups and start breaking down some of the big time performances.
Yeah, and if you're not already, subscribe, like, comment, and subscribe. Go to the YouTube page to see all of our shows. Everything's loaded there. It's basically a whole archive library of all of our shows that we've ever had. So guys can go to that. And you can also go to scoreatl.com. Some stories cranking out. I know Max is working on one for the Weaver School that is absolutely doing a phenomenal job on the baseball realm. So that I'm sure will be up at some point today. So y'all go check all that out. But let's keep it rolling, Craig. Let's go to the second segment. So we're going to bring Hayden on. But before we do, what's your thoughts on just the Georgia? I'm obviously you're a Georgia fan. What's your thoughts on the Georgia program just so far before we bring him on?
In terms of the draft or just overall?
It's overall. What's your thoughts? Just off-season, recruiting, it's everything. It's their status as a program.
I think it's been good, but here's what I think is missing a little bit. It's like so many teams, when you have like great superstar players, you want to kind of market them. Like I would have done a much better job of marketing Bowers back in the day. So it's like I just want to see them. I mean, some of these guys, who are the main attractions this year? Who, when you tune into a Georgia game, who are you going to get to see on the defensive side of the ball, offensive? I just want to see them promote some of their kind of appealing players more.
Let me ask you this. That's such a great point you brought up, Craig. In what ways do you want to kind of see them promoted? Is it kind of like more on the social media aspect? Is it more like, okay, hey, Georgia has this game coming up. These are the guys to watch for. Like, what way, if you were in their shoes, that you would want to promote kind of those key players this year? Mikael Williams is another one as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different opportunities. You can go the corny route, and it's like put Carson Beck in some insurance commercial, but it's got to be better than that. Like,
okay,
let's say like compare, like do the stats. Like, here's this guy. Here's what he's going to be able to potentially do this season based on last year. Here's some of the guys that could make the Heisman, or I don't know. I just want to see them promote individuals more. I know they do it. It's like the G way and all this stuff. They don't want to like single guys out, but I think it will get people hyped up. And you can't miss on opportunities like that.
100% right. I love that, Craig. Great point by you. Great point. Not think you were going to go there, but I like that. I agree. When you have guys like the Lads and the Brocks, promote them a little bit further.
Not just on their birthdays. Yeah. You follow the Georgia account, just like, happy birthday, Lad. It's like, these guys, I mean, look where Lad just went in the NFL draft. I mean, you guys should have been letting the whole Georgia Bulldogs nation like celebrate him wearing that jersey that entire time.
I agree. We'll see what they do, Craig. Great point out by you. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring Hayden on, talk a little bit about Georgia as landed. A major prospect. So we're going to start there. We talked about it last week, Hayden. He was crystal ball there, and it's official. So, Hayden, what's your reaction, man, to Georgia landing Arizona State QB Jaden Rashada?
I mean, it's a great addition to the team. He came out of high school as I think a top 50 player in the country, almost unanimously. I know some places had him as a 5-star. Has had an interesting career, I think, so far, even though it's only been less than right at a full year. From his short stint at Florida to his time at Arizona State, I think bringing him in is a great addition, in the fact that it just brings him more talent to the quarterback room at Georgia.
Yes, it does. And obviously we talked about it last week, and just, obviously wanting to kind of get that room. And you brought up great points, Hayden. You said, you thought that having that extra guy in there will kind of solidify the room, and how, competition is great, and how he's obviously not running from competition between those guys, and how he could potentially have a chance to start and compete for that role in 2025. So I think it's going to be big for them. And then overall, so just let's break down just the QB room as a whole now, with obviously Jarrett Curtis, and then obviously you have Ryan Montgomery, Gunnar Stockton, now Jaden Rashada, Ryan Puglisi. What's your thoughts on the QB room as a whole?
I think it's really deep, and I think at this point it's also very diverse in the types of guys you have. You have your traditional pocket passers, your bigger guys like next year it'll be Ryan Montgomery and Puglisi, who are 6'3", 6'4", 215. Then you have Gunnar Stockton and Jaden Rashada, who are very different, but have some running ability and are a little, where Gunnar Stockton 6'1", 215. Jaden Rashada, on the other hand, 6'4", like 190, maybe 200 pounds. It adds some versatility in there, and it gives you some guys that really can give you different looks in the offense, and that you can build different types of offenses depending on what players and what kind of skill set next year and the next year and 2026 these teams have for the future.
No doubt about it. And then my last one, I'll throw it to Craig. What's your thoughts just overall as the program? Obviously, we're going to talk about the draft here in a sec, but just their development of some of these players, right? We've seen, obviously, Lad go, Brock, but just guys coming in, for an example, not maybe heavily recruited or, low-end guys, but turning them into these phenomenal talents that can go and and play on the NFL level and play at the next level. What's your thoughts just on the development that this program has at Georgia?
I think they do a really good job of finding these guys that are. I mean, I'll throw Lad 80. I'll throw A.D. Mitchell, even though he transferred and ended up getting drafted from Texas. Of Javon Bullard, these guys that maybe don't have some of the measurables in high school, or maybe there's some reason that they're not ranked as high, but they bring them in but find those physical traits like Lad running a 4.39, A.D. running I think a low 4.3, and Javon Bullard running a mid 4, and bringing them in and developing that talent and putting them into a system that really shows their strengths and allows them to develop into high-end college players and day 1 and day 2 draft picks.
Yeah, Hayden, I want to talk about Jaden a little bit. So last year, you can't really take away too much. He ends up going to Arizona State, early enrollee, plays in 3 games, deals with some injuries. I think he's, according to this, coming off a thumb surgery, so he didn't necessarily get to play a lot. He was considered to be kind of coming back into the fray this past spring. Now he transfers to Georgia. So what do you think he can take away from just that first year? And what do you think ultimately led to his decision to want to leave?
When it comes to what he can take away, I mean, it's still, he started multiple games. He won that game coming out of spring last year and going into fall. He got injured. Stuff happens. I think you can take a little bit away. It's starting experience. It's something that Georgia most likely, unless they bring another transfer, will not have going into 2025. When it comes to his experience and his interesting journey this far, I think some of it was, I mean, when all the problems happened right after he enrolled at Florida, getting to another school that late in the cycle very well could have been very hard for Jaden. So Arizona State may have been one of his only options and not somewhere he really wanted to be. And then he comes into spring, he's coming off a major injury, and someone's passed him by going into the spring that, while he may be more talented, that person got to start the entirety of the spring for the Sun Devils, or last season for the Sun Devils, and was most likely getting more of the first team reps.
And here's another question, Hayden. So you mentioned he's had an interesting journey, and 100%. And so you have this guy that he's going into college, he's signing the NILs or whatever. Now it doesn't work out at this school, and it almost feels like going to Georgia, it's like in a way that is kind of humbling. It's also like a test for him because the quarterback room's deep, and it looks like he's going from a guy was one of the first people to get the NILs going into college. Now he's going to a place like Georgia where it's like that's going to be all business. I mean, it is. He's just one of the main guys in that quarterback room. He's obviously got great coaches to learn from, but I feel like this is a big change in that regard where he is going to have to be humbled, and it's like all business now.
Yeah, I feel like he very well may have been humbled a little bit. And it may also be that he's looking more at the big picture of, instead of trying to get money today and make $1 million or whatever he was given at Florida and Arizona State, looking at the big picture saying, hey, Georgia's their last 2, Stetson Bennett, Jake Fromm were both late round draft picks. And now Carson Beck's expected to be one of the first quarterbacks off the board in next year's NFL draft. And it may be more so I'm going to compete for the job. I'm going to get developed, and I'm going to be a high round draft pick and make my money in the NFL, not in college.
Yep. And I mean, this headline says Jaden's unprecedented recruitment, how 4-star quarterback went from $13.85 million to no NIL deal. And he was believed to be the first. You were mentioning Florida, though. What happened with that? Was that before Arizona State?
So he enrolled at Florida as an early enrollee last spring. There's conflicting reports, but from what reports we have, he had signed an NIL deal with the boosters of the University of Florida, and they were unable to make good on that contract and that agreement. So he didn't transfer it out because he'd already enrolled and transferred to Arizona State, where he started 3 games last season and transferred to Georgia afterwards.
Man, yeah, that's a lot going on. There's tons of stories. Yeah, so it feels like, I mean, he probably just at this point that's almost like 3 different spots in your first like year. So I mean, what can we expect from him? Just when does he arrive at Georgia, and just how big is his window of opportunity?
He won't be able to arrive until fall camp for the fall semesters,
Yeah.
from my understanding. He'll be just as any non-early enrollee freshman. I think you can expect him to be a third string quarterback moving into next season, competing with Gunnar Stockton, maybe for being the number 2 there, and competing with Ryan Puglisi to be the third string quarterback.
Interesting. And I mean, he is still pretty young. So in terms of his eligibility, he only played in 3 games last year. Do you know anything about whether he's getting like a red shirt for that, medical?
My understanding is he should, because he played less than 4 games, he should have been able to redshirt last season. Should have 4 more years of eligibility going into this season.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, he definitely adds to that quarterback room. Interesting. You got anything?
Yes, sir. Let me ask you this, Hayden. So obviously we coming up on the big period, right? Spring is here, right? We talked about the spring practice. Obviously, Georgia coach is going to be out, all positions and things like that. What are you just hearing about maybe some places they might hit, or players that they kind of want to see potentially in the spring practice?
I think you're going to see them around the Atlanta area a lot. I think they will be at Cedar Grove at least at some point. Bo Walker is one of their biggest priority targets that's already committed, but after the leaving of Del McGee, as we've talked about in past weeks, is more of a question mark now than he was in last fall. I think that'll be a big one, along with other prospects they have there. And then I think that they'll be at Westlake. One of their top offensive tackle prospects, and probably their top wide receiver prospect in Juan Gaston at offensive tackle, and Travis Smith Jr. at wide receiver, both go to Westlake, and they are both some of the most important prospects that they're really trying to get in this coming 2025 class.
No doubt about it. It's going to be obviously a lot of fun, some major prospects, you said. And as you've been mentioning, Hayden, got to keep an eye out, obviously, on the Bo Walker recruitment, especially with Dale McGee getting the head coaching job at Georgia State. So that's going to be one to watch. Is there any prospects you would like to see them target that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, that you think could come in and be a key contributor, maybe an underrated guy that you think could really fits the mold of the Georgia program?
I really, after watching some film, I really like Todd Robinson at Valdosta. Not a guy that a lot of people knew going into this spring and going into this recruiting class. He's really exploded as of the past few months. I mean, he went into, I think, December with no major offers, and now he has offers from Georgia, LSU, Alabama, USC. Just about every major program is going after him, and he is a really interesting prospect. He plays sort of a wildcat quarterback for Valdosta. At 5'11", 6 foot, somewhere around 200 pounds. There's questions of whether he's going to play running back or wide receiver at the next level.
That is a good point. Craig, was there anything you had on, obviously, the players and the recruiting before I asked about the draft a little bit?
No, you can move on to the draft.
All right. So, got to ask you, Hayden, we hit it on it a little bit, right? Obviously, what were your thoughts on – I mean, I thought it was a reach. Not that Brock Bowers is not talented. I thought he could have definitely went top 10. But it just does not seem, with how deep their room is at tight end spot for the Raiders, seemed like a reach at 13 getting a Brock Bowers. Not that he shouldn't have been taken there, just for their team fitting the mold of what they got going on. I think I would have liked Bowers in Indianapolis, Hayden, or maybe the Jets. But what's your thoughts on that pick?
I think it's an interesting it's a kind of clunky fit. I mean, they drafted Michael Mayer in the second round, I believe, last year, and there's a few other guys in that room. But I think lots of people on their draft boards had him as a top 3 or 4 prospect in the league. And I think when at 15, when you have a prospect that's that much higher in your rankings than where you're picking, there's times when you just have to take best player available, and if it's bad, it's not great for the players that are already in that room, but you just are trying to get the best player that you possibly can. That's going to help you win right now and help. I mean, I would not be surprised with Gardner Minshew, Michael Mayer, Devontae Adams if that team can make a run at the playoffs next year.
Wow, that's a bold one. Run at the playoffs. Got to mark you down for that. It's a bold take, Hayden. I like it though. Got to mark you down for that one. Okay. All right, let's ask about a couple other ones, and I'll throw it to Craig. Ladd McConkey to the Chargers. Obviously, going to talk more about the Chiefs later as well. But what's your thoughts on that one?
I think it's a very interesting fit. Ladd is a guy that's going to come in and be a really good wide receiver from day one. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, he ran a 4.39 at the combine, which was, I think, a lot faster than most people thought. I thought most people thought he was going to run in maybe the low 4s, possibly the 5s, and you add that to his ability to be one of the best route runners in college football last year and be considered to be the best route runner in the draft. I think it's going to be really interesting pairing him with Justin Herbert and that team, considering how little wide receiver talent they have on that team right now. I think you could see him go for 1,000 yards in his rookie season.
All right, and my last one, Amarius Mims to the Bengals, sitting right there, scooped them up at 18. Thoughts?
I think it's a great pick for Cincinnati. I think he's going to be one of the best offensive tackles that comes out of this class. I think he's a little raw as a pass blocker, but it's one of the biggest needs that Cincinnati's had throughout probably the past half decade or more. I mean, it gives you insurance for trying to keep Joe Burrow upright. I mean, he's been knocked out of 2 of the seasons in a 4-year career. So they passed on Penei Sewell when they took Jamar Chase, which was controversial at the time. I think it's worked out for them. They've got one of the best wide receivers in the league. It's just something that's been a long time coming that they've really needed to get.
100% agree on that. I throw it to you, Craig.
What do you think about Amarius Mims, just his size and how quick his opportunity is in the NFL to be all conference or all pro?
I think he'll be probably a day one starter. If there was a reason he was a top 10 recruit in high school and the number 1 offensive tackle in the country, I believe. I mean, he's massive. He's 6'7", he's 330 pounds, and I mean, and is extremely quick on his feet and is. I mean, really shows the ability to be an elite pass blocker. It's obvious because he played very few snaps in college. He was only a starter for full time for 1 season and only started a season and a half, and was still, just based on measurables and the small bit of film he had, a top 20 selection in the NFL draft.
And what do you like about Javon Bullard's game in the NFL? Do you think he's going to be able to bring that physicality that all his fans love so much?
I think he will be able to bring it to some extent. I think he's going to have to tone it down a little bit. The NFL has gotten to where it's not nearly as hard hitting, especially for safeties, as college football is. I think he's going to have to take it back just a little bit, but at the same time, that work ethic and that tenacity that he shows as in both the run and pass game, as whatever he ends up playing, if he plays nickel safety or as a true deep safety, I think it's going to translate really well to the pros.
Can I say real quick, and I'll throw it back to Craig? I love him in Green Bay because they've been in desperate need of obviously a safety, and I think it's a position that, as you mentioned with Amarius Mims maybe having that potential to be a day one starter, I think he could as well. Obviously, they got a safety in free agency, but Bullard, like you said, if he can kind of control it a little bit, but still being able to come downhill with the tenacity and the ferocity that he has, I think he could be a great fit for Green Bay and be a early contributor for them.
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason that he was one of the best safeties in college football for 2 years, and there was a reason that he was both the MVP of the Peach Bowl and the national championship game last year. He is just it shows. I mean, he was a 3-star prospect. He comes all the way through the University of Georgia, starts for, I think he actually started 3 years, but that first year he was a starter at a nickel safety, and then he made the transition 2 years ago to being a full-time safety, and then this past year he was beside Malachi Stark's one of the best safeties in college football.
And were you talking about Kamari Lassiter?
No, I was still talking about Javon Bullard.
Okay, gotcha.
I think Kamari's also going to be a great player. His 40 time kind of hurt him, I think, in the draft, but still, I mean, he ran a sub 4.5 40 as a cornerback and still was a early day 2 draft pick because, I mean, his film is just unbelievable. I mean, he was one of the best corners in college football last year. He came in, he was a shutdown corner. Everything that you want to see out of a cornerback, he showed him at Georgia.
And then let's talk about Brock a little bit. I was excited he didn't go to the Jets, and once he went to the Raiders, I was like, well, I didn't want him to have to pay all those damn taxes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like,
that's like what? okay, that makes sense.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. He's not about that. But then going to Las Vegas, I was like, man, that is a really good pick for him. But now it's like the Chiefs, we're gonna have to go up against him. I just feel like he's gonna make us pay. But what do you think about that fit? And I mean, how good can he make the Raiders?
I mean, as I said earlier, I think he can help that team to at least a winning record in a fringe playoff position. I think he very well could be a 1,000-yard receiver or tight end in his first year, and I think he's going to step in and immediately be one of the best tight ends in the league because of his ability to play H tight end, Y tight end, and move out wide and basically be a giant wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think that's what Mel Kiper was describing him as. He's not a tight end. He's an offensive entity, is how he describes him. Like, basically, you can use him as a receiver if you're lacking. But what do you know about the Raiders' kind of passing attack this year? Like, what weapons are around him? And we've seen him at Georgia when the receivers were down. He was able to be the go-to guy. But do you think he's in a kind of a good fit to just contribute each week? And where do you see him as a potential fantasy guy?
I really see him as, I mean, because Mayer's much more of a blocking tight end. He's a really good receiver, but he's not a dynamic tight end. And then you have Devontae Adams out wide. I feel like some of the pressure that would have been on him if he had gone to the Jets or a lot of other teams are going to be lessened because they have to worry about having a big 6'7" tight end in Mayer and one of the best wide receivers out wide to defend. So it's going to open up more the ability for him to be against smaller linebackers because they're going to have to defend Mayer, and if he does get lined up against cornerbacks, it's most likely not going to be the number one cornerback on that team.
What's going on, Jimmy, man? Appreciate you tuning in, man. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about the NFL in a little bit. Obviously, we have to curb our thoughts on the Falcons, but we'll love your comments in the comment section, what you thought about the draft overall, but we'll talk about that later. Appreciate you tuning in. Last one for you, Hayden, before we let you get out of here. What's your thoughts, Hayden? What guy, obviously, you think can come in and contribute maybe the most early on out of these picks, whether it's Amari Mims, it's Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers, Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard? What guy you think is going to be an instant impact guy for his team?
One guy I really like is Cedric Van Pran. I thought he was a day 2 guy. I thought he may have been able to slip into the second round even, but he fell a little bit. I get that there's some concerns with his pass blocking and when it comes to bull rushes and being able to block that. But he is such a physical center, and his ability to run block and to run an offensive line, I think, could really translate, if not as a starter year 1, as a starter in year 2 or year 3.
Gotcha. Well, Hayden, man, we appreciate you coming on. Give us a little bit of intel on Georgia in the draft. Really appreciate your thoughts, man, and we'll talk to you again next week.
See you guys.
All right. There goes Hayden, guys. So that's the latest on Georgia, obviously. And we're going to have Max coming up here in just a second as he gets ready to come on, and we'll talk about Bama here in a second. But as we keep rolling, Craig, what is your thoughts on Colorado? Let's talk about them just real quick. We bring on Max, their big weekend. Obviously, let's talk about some of them. So we talked about earlier, obviously talked about Montrez Walker landing. It also landed Nakai Greenhill, formerly of Michigan, played there for 3 years before going to Charlotte. Last year had 73 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble for them. Yeah, they also got 3-star recruit tight end Corbin Lesher from Tennessee. Also got Alice Graham last Friday, cornerback, and then they recently just got you probably seen him play a little bit, Craig, and that is Ingles Landon Christian, former star offensive lineman Zachariah Owens, who was at Clemson last year, only played in 2 games, appeared in 2 games with 13 snaps, but massive at 6'6", 375. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, Zachariah, he was a multi-year starter. We actually televised their game against Prince Ave early in the season. Absolute monster. Eagles Landing was so good at running the football. And then, I don't know, I think it's just a good week for Colorado. They got a bunch of transfers, all guys that I think made the move because not that they didn't have a future at their current school, but Colorado really pushed hard to get them there, and they needed them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously we've seen Dion, and obviously with the change, we talked about it last year, Craig, with them finally getting some stability kind of at the defensive coordinator position after losing the guy and getting a recruit coordinator, not having Warren Sapp. So being to get some guys that kind of come in there and stabilize a little bit, we think they're going to have a better 25 class than 24. I think it was only 5-6 recruits they got in 24, Craig. So I think they're doing a good job there. And for Owens, I think it opens up a possibility for you to start. What do they most need help with? We talked about last year, Craig, offensive line. So you bring guys 6'6", 375. At least he can compete for that role, or if not, he could be a solid depth piece for you. So if you're Colorado, you got to feel good with the guys you got. Also landing a 5-star out of high school, one of the heavily recruited offensive tackles, landing him as well. I think they're doing a good job with bringing the guys in the offensive line.
100%. And this is how important the offensive line is. One, it's got to be capable from the start of the game, but their offensive line tended to get exposed as the game went on.
Yes.
They need an offensive line that gets better as the game goes on, and that's what they're trying to do.
100%. But yeah, guys, that's all we got for now on Colorado. That's our thoughts. We're going to go ahead and bring on Max to talk a little bit about Alabama. Oh. All right. What's going on, Max? How you feeling?
How we doing, guys? Doing well. Can't complain.
Doing good. Good, man. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on, man. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about draft with you and everything. And you brought a couple of names up to me, Max, that we want to kind of get into with Bama. And let's go ahead and start with Elijah Pritchett, a guy that you guys got, excuse me. Elijah Pritchett's a guy that you guys had for a while, recently got arrested. Talk a little bit about that and what's the latest going on with him?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation for sure. I mean, he got arrested for, I believe it was speeding in Tuscaloosa on Friday. And the starting tackle spot, at least both of them are probably up in the air right now, more so than the interior offensive line. But I would say was his to lose, and I know he's had some problems in the past, so it's just a very unfortunate situation for sure.
Yes, it is. Hopefully he's able to, get it together and figure it out, be a little bit smarter with those situations because you guys definitely need them as far as the offensive tackle. That's an important position. But, man, what's just your thoughts on Cameron Howard, another guy you guys got recently? What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, 2-year starter from Charlotte, just adding more depth and experience to that cornerback room that we know is very young and will have a ton of freshmen and a ton of inexperience. But any experience is helpful, and adding Cameron Howard should be helpful for Alabama in the back end of their defense.
What are some things you're hoping he teaches some of these young guys that are going to be expecting to play these key roles next year? Maybe get exposed a little early, but with his leadership potentially and then him having a good kind of grasp on the game, what are you hoping he teaches the young guys?
Maybe it's something whether it's just getting out on the field, on a college football field, playing against college football competition and just trying to maybe like keeping it – I don't know, how would I say it? Keeping the emotions down, making sure the pressure is not too much. Because, I mean, this will all be their first times playing for Alabama, and I guess it will be different for Howard going from Charlotte to Tuscaloosa in terms of big game atmospheres. But I feel like they'll all end up learning together that like with Malachi helping them too, that it's a big deal to play for Alabama, and especially to get playing time on the field, it's going to have to be a lot of competition there for sure.
No doubt. We appreciate the comment. Obviously, we'll throw it up here real quick, Jimmy. But Elijah Pritchett actually played at Carver Columbus. That's where Jimmy's from, one of the big supporters on the show. So definitely appreciate this comment and letting us know a little bit about that. But real quick, I'm going to throw it to Craig.
Jarvis Jones territory.
Yep, Jarvis Jones territory. But what's your thoughts, Max, a little bit on the recruits there? I mean, I think Bama with obviously the board coming in, they're doing a good job with the recruiting. We talked about it. We're giving them his flowers a little bit on the show. But what do you think is some couple guys, as we asked Hayden with Georgia, that Alabama could potentially be recruiting? They're looking to get what this spring practice starting to kick off now, not just here in Georgia, but also in Bama and some of the southeastern states.
Yeah, maybe looking to add more depth all around. I mean, I believe when Ryan Williams comes, there'll be more depth at the wide receiver position, but maybe some guys there that could be helpful. Like you said, adding Howard on the back end for the defense should be very helpful too. It's just a matter of whether they're looking for transfer portal guys who's got the experience or guys who are straight out of high school but will be acclimated into that environment. But yeah, it's just it will be very interesting to see who fits where and where Howard will actually end up playing up.
And then what do you think about the Lions trading up to get Terrion Arnold? That's obviously an exciting part of the first round. It was in Detroit. They really wanted him. Do you think that was the right move to kind of go out of their way to show that he's their guy?
I think it was a great move. That was one of my favorite picks in the first round, to be honest. And it was just because, well, it was in Detroit, and that was a great thing for Terrion and to be welcomed by the fans of the Lions just right there from the start of his career. But Terrion's a locker room guy. He's a high character guy, and he makes the plays on the field that will show on the film. And the fact that he fell all the way down to 24, I couldn't believe it. I thought he would at least be a mid-round guy going. I thought he would go to around the Colts, around the 15, where they took Latu. But I thought it was a steal for the Lions. And then for him to be paired with Brian Branch on that back end of the Lions defense too, it should be scary for years to come.
That's right. And he went right after one pick after Brian Thomas, you said is going to have a very special NFL career. So what do you think just of the first round, kind of ended with some Alabama guys and just a lot of familiar faces?
First round, it did not go. I believe the first couple picks went as people thought, and then when that 8th pick came around, I believe some people were shaken up. But from there, I mean, Craig, y'all kind of lucked out with the Chiefs. I cannot believe the Bills let the Chiefs do that and get Worthy up there like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We'll have to talk about that
Doesn't
later.
make any sense.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Wow.
Yeah, I
but there
feel
was-
like some teams, it's like they still have this old school mindset where they're balancing like the whole draft and they're like, well, we have this many picks and we don't want to do this. And it's like, if you need a certain position and there's a talent like there, you got to just get them. You got to get them. Chiefs have been willing to do it. But so a lot of talk was about how there weren't as many trades as we thought. I think it's because there were some positions that were just so deep, whether it was quarterback or receiver, where it's like you had multiple options at that position. So you aren't necessarily going to trade. Everyone kind of sat back and waited to see kind of who was getting taken where. There are actually more offensive tackles, offensive linemen that went early on than I expected. But what do you think just in terms of the lack of trades? What do you attribute that to?
I attribute that to, I guess, teams finding what they want, or like how you were saying last weekend, how sometimes it's just best to take the best player available, even though you could have some position needs. If there's a glaring best player on the board, then you should take. Like I believe, even though they traded up to take him, Terrion was definitely the best player on the board for the Lions, and they traded up to take him. Same with Dallas and the Vikings as well. I mean, he fell. I couldn't believe Dallas fell all the way down to 17, and fell in that back end of the first round, and the Vikings ended up snagging him, which was a great pick. And he'll replace Griffin for them too. So just adds a much needed edge help for them on their defense.
Yeah, I think he slid because the Falcons, I thought they were going to take him.
I agree. I thought he was going to go at 8. And then from there, I think the Falcons kind of started the trend for the quarterbacks after that, because then it was McCarthy and Nix. And then there was 6 taken in the first 12 picks. I don't think that's ever happened before, but yeah. I guess for the trades, I guess just teams finding what they want and taking the best player on the board.
Yeah, Max, and then talk a little bit about going back to some of the Bama picks. Just Kool-Aid McKinstry. I thought another guy that slid a little bit, but going to New Orleans where they need a little bit of corner help, they need a guy outside of obviously Marshawn Lattimore who was really good, but has dealt with some injuries through the course of his career. But what you think about that pick and them landing Kool-Aid?
Yeah, I thought it was a great pick, especially the value in the early second round for Kool-Aid. 41 to the Saints. I would say Kool-Aid fell because of the Jones fracture he had in his foot, but then when he ran at the pro day for Alabama, I believe he ran under a 4.5 for his 40, and so people knew his athleticism was still there and he was still Kool-Aid. But I think it was a great pick for the Saints, and they definitely need some help on the outside of their defense, and then he'll hope to help. I believe Marshawn Lattimore is still there as well for them. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a great pick for New Orleans.
No doubt. All right, Max, help me feel a little bit better as a Bengals fan, man. We selected Jermaine Burton. I've heard some things about him, but I heard he can play at a high level, play for Georgia, right? Play for you guys. Just what are your thoughts on him as a whole and what he could be? I know he's a big play guy, but what's your thoughts on him?
Like you said, he's a big play guy. He's a big game player. He likes to show up when it matters most. I mean, he did it when Alabama was struggling with A&M early on in the season. I believe he had close to 200 yards. In the SEC championship, he was a monster, making catches in the end zone. He was making catches on the sideline. It's just a matter if you can keep him in check and keep him in order with the emotions and everything. Saban said it on the broadcast, too, when he got picked. He was very excited for him, but he was just like, he's a great player as long as he keeps his emotions and doesn't let his emotions get the best of him as well. He should be very productive for Cincinnati. And if T. Higgins goes elsewhere, Najee, I believe he should, I don't know about immediately a wide receiver too, but he should over the years get to that point, I believe.
Okay.
He's got all the tools.
You're pretty high on Burton then, huh?
I'm high on Burton if he keeps himself in check. But if it goes past then he gets off the rails. But I believe it was a good pick from Cincinnati.
Yeah, but last year he was a 20.5 yards per catch average. So that is definitely up there as a deep threat.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about JC?
He's a great possession catcher, too, on the sideline. I mean, he would – yeah. You're good.
No,
Go
for
ahead.
sure. He can stretch the
JC,
field. What do you think about
JC
going to Tennessee?
Titans.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
I thought it was a good pick. I didn't think he would go that early, but I think it was a great pick for the Titans just for someone to protect Levis as well and for someone to open up some lanes because they just got Tony Pollard in free agency too. And now they're going to have to need Levis to throw out to Hopkins, and they got Ridley too. So Latham should be good for protecting Levis's blind side.
Yeah, I mean, that was very high, number 7 overall. But what do you think the thought process is? I mean, how valuable do you think he is going to be just as an offensive lineman? Like, what makes him stand out to where they didn't want to wait later on or maybe get a different guy? What makes him that guy?
Well, I believe the Titans went for Latham just because I think they were hoping that Alt would have fallen a little farther. I think maybe there was some belief that Neighbors would have gone to the Chargers instead of Alt, and then they were hoping that Alt would have slid down to 7. And then I guess once he was taken at 5, then they thought, okay, we need to go get our guy now. And then Latham turned out to be the guy. But I think what stands out about Latham is just he's so strong, he's so versatile, and so athletic and agile for how big he is. I mean, he was pancaking guys, making plays all over the field, giving Milroe lanes to run out of the pocket. He was very, very good last season for Alabama.
And then Will Reichardt, a kicker, getting his opportunity in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Don't always see that, but I mean, how big do you think he's going to be for the Vikings?
I think hopefully the Vikings don't have any more kicking woes like they've had in the past with Blair Walsh, but I think Reichert would be a good pick. Definitely some value there in the 6th round, and was a great college kicker and did it for 4 years, possibly more. And yeah, I think it was great value there for the Vikings.
Yep, and anyone that is undervaluating that kicker position, I mean, look at Harrison Butker.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that had a couple drought spells or whatever, but I mean, my goodness, is he clutch for the Chiefs? They would not have won without him. So I think it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, how many Alabama players were drafted? And then have you seen any news about maybe some undrafted free agent signings?
So overall, there was 10 Bama players selected from, it was Latham to the Titans, Dallas Turner to the Vikings, Terrion to the Lions, Kool-Aid to the Saints, Chris Braswell, who I thought could have gone higher, went to the Bucks at 57 in the second round. I thought it was a great value pick for the Buccaneers. Jermaine Burton to the Bengals, Justin Aboigbe to the Chargers, Jace McClellan to the Falcons, Reichert to the Vikings, and then Mr. Irrelevant, Jalen Key to the Jets. And for as far as free agent signings go, I have not seen the most, but I'm sure there were a couple. I can check that out.
Yeah, I was trying to follow it too. I think like Dominic Blaylock, who we talked about, I think he got signed by the Jets, actually.
Be a good fit for him.
Yeah.
Aaron
There were a
Rodgers.
couple others. I'm going to try to look at that, but I'm sure there'll be more. But 10, I mean, that's a pretty solid haul. Obviously, Georgia had 8. I mean, double digits, that's big time.
Yeah, it's not bad. And then Saban's last class as a coach too. He was. I thought he was very good on the call on the draft. I don't know if y'all were watching, but he was giving great in-depth breakdowns of each player. He definitely did his homework, from what it looked like.
I didn't get to see too much of it. Did he come at it strictly as a college perspective, or did he actually have like a pretty good grasp on what the teams needed?
So I believe it was ESPN had 2 desks set up, and there was one that was like the NFL crew with Mel Kiper breaking it down with them. And then I believe College Game Day had their own desk set up, and that was Desmond Howard, Reese Davis, Nick Saban, and Kirk Herbstreit. And I think it was like more like the college perspective of how they were playing in college and like what stood out to Saban from their college play, and then how it could translate to the NFL. And yeah, I thought he killed it.
Yeah, it seemed like he knew it almost. I watched a pretty good bit of the draft. I even watched a little bit of day 3, a little bit, probably up into the 5th round. But yeah, like you said, I felt like he was just very astute in his analysis. And then he was going in depth on each player, like, okay, he's great at this, he's great at that. But also he needs to kind of work on this, shore this up a little bit on the next level. And he didn't do it in like an overly critical way, in my opinion, Max. I thought he did it in a very, you know what I'm saying, kind of coach type of way, like, hey man, this is what you're gonna need if you want to be successful on this next level. So like you said, I thought he did a phenomenal job.
I thought for each pick, I thought it was a very fair and very non-biased analysis. I mean, especially when Alabama's players were picked, like he was happy, but then he would go into breaking them down as well, like they were just any other player. I mean, he said the stuff about Jermaine Burton about keeping his emotions in check, but yeah, I thought he was great on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, last thing, we'll let you get out of here, Max. Let's talk a little bit about B-ball. I know you wanted to bring up a couple guys. Grant Nelson is back. What's your thoughts about that? And who do you think could be that last potential roster spot for the Crimson Tide in basketball?
Well, Grant Nelson coming back is huge, just to add some front court depth for Alabama. It's something they were really missing over this past Final Four run, and which I thought if they had just another big guy or someone at that 6'10", that range, they could have put up a little more of a fight against UConn, but Grant Nelson returning will be huge. He averaged 12 points a game last season, 6 rebounds a game. I mean, just another body to throw at someone with experience as well in playing college basketball. And then for that last spot, well, I think there's actually – so, Najee, right after we talked, Jaren Stevenson declared for the draft. So that kind of will open up another spot. That's 2. And then I believe Stevenson and Mark Sears have until May 29th to decide if they're going to come back to college or go to the NBA. And so that leaves 2 spots open. I would like to see the Kentucky center, Ugonna Onyeso. I hope I didn't butcher that name, but he's been in talks for Alabama as well. And then Cliff Amorie from Rutgers, who was visiting Alabama this weekend. There should be announcements from those 2 any day now, whether it's Alabama or they're going somewhere else. But Cliff seems like more of a realistic option right now just because the visit's already happened and he's down in Tuscaloosa already. But if both of those were to be added, and they added both 2 centers who can play at the rim very well and attack the basket, I think Alabama's on watch again next year for another Final Four run.
Certainly agree, man. We appreciate the analysis. Craig, you have anything else from us when we let him go?
No, that's it.
All right, Max. Well, as always, man, appreciate you for the analysis and giving us the in-depth on Alabama. And keep doing what you're doing, man. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thank y'all for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, there goes Max. And last topic for college, and then we'll get right into NFL, Craig, and wrap it up. But what are your thoughts on former Lounge star? I did not get a chance to see him, but it's one of the games. You're a Walton alum. I know you remember it. So talk about that game a little bit. And actually, Ja'Curry Brown now officially committed to UCF.
Man, if people didn't watch that game, would have been 2021, and it was Walton against Lowndes. First ever meeting between the schools in the Corky Kell Classic. It will go down as one of the best games ever. So Walton came out on fire. They actually were very senior led before the next season, where they were pretty much all juniors, beat Buford, then returned everyone last year. So this was a pretty senior led Walton team. They built a huge lead. They were actually up, I think it was 28-14 with about 4 minutes left, and Ja'Curry Brown brought them all the way back. Walton knew it was going to come through him. It was one of the most heroic, incredible performances I've ever seen. Just making guys miss out of the pocket, extending plays, breaking tackles. Then he threw a 60-yard bomb on the buzzer, and then Walton ended up winning in overtime. But, I mean, it was unbelievable. He was the best player I saw that entire season. He's an absolute freak. He has a huge arm, and, I mean, he is the real deal. And he was so respected down at Lowndes, where even the Valdosta fans that are just born and bred to hate them, I mean, if he was walking in the grocery store, can I have your picture? I mean, he was a true South Georgia Valdosta legend.
No doubt about it. And then great, obviously, story by you, Craig, because you got to see up close and personal. What's your thoughts on him going to that loaded QB room? Obviously, we know E.J. Colson's there. That'll be some time for him. But they also got K.J. Jefferson, and now they add Brown. What's your thoughts on the QB room for UCF real quick?
I think maybe not like by design, but we're going to see a bunch of different guys out there getting playing time. Just see what they can do. I don't think they'll shy away from giving them an opportunity. UCF is a rock-solid program, but I think you got to give a guy like Ja'Curry a chance. What he can do with the ball, it's a very special set of gifts. I mean, he's got just an absolute cannon. He's got escapability, breakaway speed. He's massive. I think you got to give him a chance.
I agree with you, Craig. Well, that's all we guys got for college. We're going to go to the NFL now. Transition, obviously talk a little bit about the Falcons a little bit and the thoughts on the draft. But Craig. Man, when I seen this, I'm like, bro, what are the Bills doing? Like, do they like losing to you guys? Like, it's just, how do you make a trade with a team that's consistently beat you, right? Beat you this past year, and you let them go get another speedy receiver? Like, what are you doing? Like, a guy that could run a 4.21, Craig, a 4.21 in the combine. I just don't get it. I mean, you guys are, I think it's going to be so much better. Obviously, we have to see what happens with Rashee Rice, but you add him and you add two more speedsters. Marquise Brown is an NFL veteran now, and then Xavier Worthy. Like, you guys are going to be tough to cover. For Buffalo, it's baffling. I don't understand it.
Yeah, first of all, Marquise Brown has basically been living with Patrick Mahomes this entire offseason. So watch out for that.
Wow.
And then second of all, you're 100% right. Xavier Worthy. People want to say, oh, he's only 165 pounds, this and that. It's like, what were the Chiefs missing last year? A guy that can go over the top and open it. Well, he can do it. His jump off the line of scrimmage, the breakaway speed, his ability to catch those screens, come in motion. He opens up that offense tremendously. There's a history of the Chiefs stepping up in front of the Bills, or even kind of outdoing them in trades and different movements. I mean, it is pretty typical. And yeah, I think they missed on a very special talent, but I also think Worthy's going to be much better with the Chiefs. He can kind of develop his role after the first year, but really what he needs to do this year, just line up, use that speed, go deep, try to spark those big plays. And I don't worry too much about that 165 pounds. He doesn't shy away from contact. He's physical. And the Chiefs have done that before. I've been a fan long enough to remember when Dante Hall was our leading receiver.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, and as a small receiver, so we've come a long way.
Yes, you have. Are you surprised the Chiefs picked Worthy maybe over like a McConkey? Because I thought it was going to be Ladd there.
A little bit. I thought Lab would have been a great pick. I think the way that the draft shaped up, though, they just had to jump on him. And you saw Mahomes right before it. He tweeted something out once they decided to make the trade. So I think they just felt like they couldn't pass on him. And now you have your own new form of the cheetah.
Great job, Bills.
Yep.
Great job.
And that's the other thing. It checks off that box, too.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's just baffling for me. I don't understand it. But one thing I will say for the Bills, I did like that they got Keon Coleman. I mean, I would have just picked him at that spot. I wanted to trade it with the Chiefs. If they get Worthy, I mean, they still get him, whatever. But, I do like him. I know he's been, obviously Wildland fans, which is kind of how he is naturally. But I think having him come in, how good he was, obviously with Florida State transferring over from Michigan State. But I do like that pick for the Bills at that spot nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a good pick. But also, I mean, with the Chiefs, when they tend to draft people, they develop them very well. They say the players they draft turn to gold. And so that's even more dangerous because you have Worthy going to a team that knows exactly how they want to use them.
Yes. And then overall, what were your kind of thoughts on the Chiefs draft as a whole?
I thought it was a legitimate A, 100%. They got the fastest receiver in the draft, got an offensive lineman. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Sorry, I'll figure it out by the season. But Kingsley, who, once again, he's going to develop into an all-pro. He's massive. He's got great hands where he can take the bull rush, knock down the hands, and then use that size. It's going to be really hard to get around him. He can go downhill. Wouldn't really consider him a project player. I think he's just going to develop and get really good. We got a tight end that's dynamic that can fulfill that role. So they got some impact players right away and also built for the future. I think it's a legitimate A draft.
Respect that. Yeah, definitely a good draft for the Chiefs as always. And we'll see how it obviously pans out. But yeah, great job by you guys, getting those pieces that you needed. For you, Craig, who was the biggest surprise in the draft?
Well, I mean, just honestly, it was the Falcons pick. I'm going to spit out my tacos.
Spit out tacos is crazy.
I was just caught off guard. I was watching it with my sister who's in town. I just didn't see that coming at all.
No.
I didn't see anyone talking about it. So it was very interesting because, I mean, what did we talk about on the show last week? We said, I just want to see somewhere where Michael Penix can go and we get an opportunity to see him start because he is a very hot commodity in terms of a draft pick. But to go to the Falcons, I was just confused. So that was the biggest shocker. But, I mean, let's see what happens. I'm willing to check it out. But you didn't really even hear anything, like, leading up to it where they were, like, working him out or anything. So that's just why it was a little surprising for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that pick was obviously a surprise. Obviously, I'll be very careful with my words. We'll see how it works out for them. But I think, it would have been nice to see them, just, get an impact guy instantly. I'll leave it there. I won't give my full spill, but it was definitely a big surprising pick. Mine was, and I think Jacksonville did a good job, was them getting Brian Thomas. I was shocked that he fell so far, as Max has been saying, with how talented he is. I definitely think he's going to be a big impact for them losing Calvin Ridley, Craig, and then him coming in. I think he could be a pretty big instant impact player for them, big target for Trevor Lawrence, and a guy they could just throw the ball to. Obviously, they had Evan Ingram, they had Christian Kirk, but that kind of big weapon guy, because, Calvin Ridley's not the tallest guy, but you get big guy, Brian Thomas, physical receiver. I think he'd be a good addition for them.
No, for sure. And then two of the guys that definitely I thought dropped a little bit, Dallas Turner, where they mentioned that, but then Nate Wiggins, him going to Baltimore, I felt like he had all the tools at cornerback. I mean, he was a no-brainer first rounder. Can cover, tackle, great size, leader, hardworking. I mean, I thought Nate Wiggins was a potential top 15, one of the first defensive guys to go. So him going to the Ravens, very dangerous.
I agree. And it was a crazy draft. Like we talked about 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks, and then a defensive player wasn't selected until I think after pick 15 or 16. So that was interesting as well. And I think that was one of the reasons why, as you just mentioned, Nate Wiggins fell so far.
No, 100%. And then I mentioned the Alabama kicker. Did Minnesota also take a punter? Or who was the team that took a punter in the 4th round?
I think I've seen that. That might have been Minnesota. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
So I mean, that's a little surprising, but I mean, it's a valuable weapon to have. I mean, if you need that spot and you have a guy that can punt it 60 to 70 yards, that's something you got to take. What do you think about the Commanders, though? Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall. I mean, did they get enough around him to where you feel like he's going to be good to go?
Yeah, you still got Terry McLaurin there. Obviously, it was Curtis Samuel to the Bills, but you have him there. You have a pretty good, tight end. I think they're building something, obviously good there. And the good thing is, obviously, he might be the potential starter coming out week 1. But no, I think they did a good job of getting some pretty good pieces for him and letting them. And I think the key is just don't rush him. Let him develop. Now that Craig he might play week 2, week 6, week 7, but they got a quarterback in there that can, start, before him to let him develop. But I think it's a pretty good situation.
Yeah, I think that entire division had a pretty good draft.
Yes.
I think you would give it to the Commanders. Green Bay also did very well. Detroit also. And then, I mean, Minnesota felt like it was a little hit or miss.
Yeah.
But, I mean, overall, I think that division is definitely deep top to bottom.
Yeah, I think for me, since we're on that topic real quick, which team had the best draft? I think the Bears. I put them up there, getting obviously Caleb Westbrook, loading him up with Rome Odunze. We see that a lot, Craig. You loading your future franchise quarterback with another player with him. We've seen the Bengals do it, obviously, with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. We've seen when Dolphins did it with Jalen Waddle and obviously Tua Tagovailoa. I think it's a great move for them because, obviously with Keenan Allen's injury history, then you get a guy to come in and contribute right now. It's going to be a weapon out of the slot. I think that's a great pick for the Bears. And I think the Panthers underratedly had a really good draft. Getting Xavier Leggett, getting some of those key pieces on the offensive line to kind of come in. I think they also quietly had a good one. And then the last one, I'm going to be honest with you, man, Philly. I think you talked about how good that draft was. Philly did an outstanding job, right? What we talked about last year, that's secondary. Went and get 2 guys. You went and got Quavion Mitchell from Toledo, fast guy, can cover very, very well with the first pick. And then you go and get Cooper DeJean, who I thought the Cowboys should have got. He's probably going to end up moving to the safety spot, but that's the position they struggle, cornerback, safety. Then you bring back in, obviously, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and then peep this, Craig. They also got Will Shipley. We talked about how good he was coming out of the backfield to kind of spell a little bit of Saquon Barkley. And then they also got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. His dad played for Philly as well. So I thought Philly nailed the draft.
Yeah, it seemed like those pieces just came right into their lap.
Yeah. Yes,
Philadelphia, definitely an A+ draft. I'm trying to think, what was I going to say? We're talking about the NFC North. Talk a little bit about the Cowboys, though. What do you think of their overall draft?
Yeah, I mean,
the offseason in general.
If I'm being real, Craig, they get a D. They did a good job of bringing back, obviously, recently Ezekiel Elliott, who's going to be another good piece and weapon for them. He's not going to be what he was before, but you get a good downhill runner, a good red zone guy that can pick up short yards, 4th and 1s, 3rd and 1s. But they went tackle obviously to start in the draft, but I don't think they surrounded with enough playmakers. I thought they should do a better job with bringing in some more playmakers in for Dak. Obviously got CD, but these guys are gonna want these big deals, Craig. So it's like I don't think they did enough to surround really Dak. So I mean, draft, I give him a C-. I don't think it wasn't nothing eye popping. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't been a very aggressive offseason.
No.
But I mean, back to the Bears, getting that level of quarterback and that level of receiver in the first round, I don't think I can remember that ever happening to another team.
No, not that
where
high.
They can make an immediate impact and also be able to contribute for years to come. I think it makes them very dangerous, but that division's so tough. I think the goal has to be a wild card bid this season. Obviously, that would still be a big jump from where they've been. But I think it's going to take a couple of years just because that division has a lot of young budding talent.
No doubt. All right, Craig, last two for we wrap up the show. What was your thoughts on kind of one of the biggest rivals for the Chiefs, the Bengals draft?
I think Mims is going to be good on the offensive line. Give you guys a B+.
Yeah, that's what I had. Okay, we in agreement, Craig. Yeah, I had a B+. I thought, real quick, I thought getting Mims is big. I mean, now there's no excuses anymore. I think when you go and get a Trent Brown out of free agency, you have Orlando Brown on the other side, then you draft Amarius Mims, who could be a potential Pro Bowler, maybe All-Pro type of guy. But all three of your tackles are 6'8", 6'7", and above, 340 pounds. So I thought they nailed that. I think Chris Jenkins, we struggled with that, Craig, last year at the defensive tackle spot. I think him coming in, that's going to be very big for them. And being able to contribute. And then getting Jermaine Burton, you feel a little bit of insurance. That's kind of the guy that's going to replace Tyler Boyd. So I thought addressing that need out of the slot, a big play guy, obviously, as Max alluded to, just being able to reel it in is going to be big for them. Getting a McKinley Jackson, another big nose tackle, run stuffer, is going to be valuable as well. And then finally getting a tight end. We'll see with Eric all going to depend kind of on his health and what he's able to do. And then Tanner McLennan as well, getting him to kind of deepen that tight end room a little bit. I think it's going to be big. Last but not least, getting Matt Lee, an underrated pick. We needed depth so bad, Craig, at the offensive line spot. Getting him out of Miami, I think it's going to be a great interior pick for us if we have to eventually replace Ted Karras. And last but not least, the most one I'm excited about is DeJohn Anthony. He laid that big hit that went viral, obviously, on Jaden Daniels this past year. But seeing him at the safety spot and how he develops is going to be crucial.
Yeah. Now, lots of defensive. Do you think Jermaine Burton was the most shocking pick?
Yes. I knew we would go receiver, but I did not expect it there, and I didn't expect it to be him. I was looking forward to like a Troy Franklin or that kind of a guy. But yes, that was very surprising.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Yes, he is.
We'll see. I mean, I think they had to have seen something special in him. It's his ability. Max pointed out the sideline catches. Certainly, that can be a key piece to that timing of the offense, and yeah, that's the thing to watch for.
No doubt. Last one, Travis Kelce signs a 2-year extension. Craig, what's your reaction before we close out the show? Just him resigning to being the highest paid tight end. There's been rumors too, Craig, that he might could retire soon, but I think that kind of qualms it.
2 years, yeah, it definitely does. It's an interesting window. Obviously, Mahomes has a lot more years than that, but I mean, he's definitely getting up there in age. I'd have to look at where he stands on some of these all-time records. I don't think he's a record chaser.
No.
No, I think he can definitely fill in the role. I mean, he's got great hands, might lose a little bit on his speed, but he's so good at boxing guys out, being crafty. So I think he'll do good, and he'll be able to go out on top. I like the 2-year window.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. Past 2 years, I think he'll be done by then.
Yeah, I agree. I like the 2-year window as well. And then you're still maximizing Mahomes' window, and then you can obviously go in the next couple of drafts and get another tight end to kind of replace him. So,
no, I think it's good.
No doubt. All right, Craig.
We'll see what happens with him and Taylor Swift in the meantime.
Hopefully we don't see none of that next year, man. Let's just play ball. Obviously, that was nice, but yeah, I'd rather just see the Chiefs play.
He's
let
getting
Mahomes
his second wind.
Maybe she's helping him out with that.
Exactly.
No doubt. But all right, guys, we appreciate you tuning in for another episode of Underrated and Overlooked. Make sure you guys go like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube page. We'll be back. I'll see you guys a little bit later on at 4. Greg will have his show tomorrow as well, drive for the GSA State title. But thanks, guys, as always, for your support, and we'll see you guys soon.